Hello, and welcome to Gunfighter Life. As always, the podcast where we talk about gunfighting the right way, with God at the center, Judeo-Christian values, and real-world, first-hand experience. I am your host, Michael Melito. First and foremost, I'm a servant of God, a follower of Jesus Christ. Military veteran of both the U.S. Marine Corps and U.S. Army, combat veteran, state rifle and pistol champion, professional big game hunter, and guide. Those are all things that I've done, but who I am. Again, a child of God, a servant of God. A teacher, a preacher, and a fisher of men. Today is my day off from work, the day that I generally record podcasting. The day off work is not the Sabbath, where I get the podcasting done generally. I was out taking the puppy for a run. If you don't know, I have a Rhodesian Ridgeback named Alexander Hamilton. He's just over 6 months old, and he's getting pretty spry. He's getting to the point where he can run at 20 miles an hour or thereabouts for quite a long stretch. So I take him running beside the Hummer on dirt roads, and the Hummer overheated. So, rather than complain about it, I pulled over and grabbed the shotgun, unloaded the buckshot, threw a plug in it so I could legally hunt, and got out and hunted some birds successfully. At least a bird successfully. I saw some more, but I figured I'd get out a podcast since the day is already 14:35 where I am. Anyway, a few thoughts. I have two truck guns. We just did an episode on truck guns. One's an AR-15 pistol, quote unquote. The other is an 870, much like I had as a police officer. I bought one when I heard that Remington was making them again. And I bought one, and sadly, it's not nearly as good as the old ones that I used to have. I had one and got rid of it. Wish I'd kept it. But I got this one for a good price, and I heard that Remington may stop making them again because they can't make money on them, keeping up with the Turkish shotguns. But to be fair, they should make a better product. I just got this one. It's fairly new, and it's having sticky extraction. The rounds are getting stuck in the barrel. It needs either a polished barrel, or I would prefer a chrome-lined barrel, and a better barrel, a slick barrel. I may just polish it myself. I may buy a new barrel. But at that point, I'll probably spend as much for a chrome-lined barrel as I would buying one of the Turkish remakes of the 870 that comes from the factory with a chrome-lined barrel. So just a little update there. And just for the gunfighters out there, if you've ever only known the Glock 19 and the AR-15, there's a lot bigger world out there to guns. I've said before, and I still believe that a shotgun is the most practical tool. It's the tool I practice with the least. It's a tool that I train with the least, but it is the most versatile. If I had to pick one gun, it would be the shotgun. A quick intro. Shot sizes go in reverse, so the bigger the number, the smaller the shot. Like I said, if you want to get into the world of hunting or being able to feed yourself or survival, whatever that means for you, a real common one, real small, is 8s. Unless you might see 9s if you're going for like skeet or something, but generally 8s and then 7.5s. They're good for your smaller sized birds, dove and down. And you get up into your 6s, that's good for your bigger birds, generally your rabbits, your squirrels, things like that. If it's a lead shot, used to be used quite a bit for ducks. Now, because of whatever environmental regulation, you have to use steel shot, so number 6 is not quite big enough, but just to give you a rough idea. Then moving on from there, you get your 4 shots. Also good for bigger rabbits and pheasants and things like that. And then your buckshot, still go in reverse, but realize that your smallest buckshot is much bigger than your largest other shot. So like number 4 buck, like I've talked in past, is my favorite go-to for defense, for animals, for most things. I still have my truck unloaded with double-aught buck because I think it's better for barrier penetration and some slugs in the side saddle. But your buckshot, again, number 4, double-aught is by far your most common. And a slug, it's just making your shotgun shoot one big, hefty projectile, kind of like a giant rifle. If it's a 12-gauge, similar ballistics, a 45-70. So that's not what today's episode. Today's episode is going to be about the 40 Smith & Wesson. Now, I've never been a fan of the 40 Smith & Wesson, I'll be honest with that. I carried it as a police officer for quite a long time. When I started out, LAPD, I was issued a Glock 22, which is a full-size Glock and 40 Smith & Wesson, as was the gun culture back in those days. Everybody thought 40 Smith & Wesson was the new hotness, and if you carried a 9, you were crazy. Everybody knew a 9 wasn't good enough. You had to have 40 Smith & Wesson or 45. Anyway, the 40 Smith & Wesson was kind of born out of the FBI in the Miami shootout in the 80s, if you're not familiar with that. They wanted a bigger, beefier cartridge. They looked at the 10 millimeter, but they found that a lot of agents couldn't handle the recoil, or from what I've been told, I wasn't there, but they wanted something a little bit less powerful. They looked at the ballistics, and they found the ballistics that they wanted with the 40 caliber bullet, and they kind of reverse engineered it to be a standard length and fit into a standard length gun. Smith & Wesson obviously was working on this, as it's known as the 40 Smith & Wesson, but Glock actually beat them to market, and from what I understand, Glock actually came out with the first commercially available gun, which would have been the Glock 22. And then the 40s, the 40 Smith & Wesson, the Smith & Wessons came out with a couple of different models of them. And obviously in the 90s and the, early 2000s, and even still, there's a lot of companies that make guns in the 40 Smith & Wesson. I never liked it because what they try to do is I like the 40 Smith & Wesson. There's nothing wrong with it. I like it better if they made it in a gun that's specifically designed for it. I don't like it when they try and take a 9mm size gun and shove a 40 Smith & Wesson into it. Generally, you get more recoil, you get more problems. A lot of those earlier, not a lot, but there were reports of those earlier Glocks blowing up and things like that. But that's my problem with it, is they try to shove it in a 9mm size gun, and you do get, on paper at least, more energy. Whether that equates to better ballistics, I don't think so. When I was still a police officer, I did some testing on my own when I started competition shooting and realized that most police officers, including myself, really weren't great pistol shots. I took it upon myself to become a better pistol shot. And I started training, and if I remember the drill correctly that I was doing, it was draw and fire 6 rounds, in the center mass of a target. I think, I forget the time, but let's say it was 2 seconds, just for argument's sake. I don't remember if that was the time. But draw, fire 6 rounds in the center of the target, and I could get more than double, if I remember correctly, 9mm rounds in the A zone, the center of that target, that man-sized target at a given distance. I could get more than double as I could with a 40 Smith & Wesson. And even back then, with everybody saying that 40 Smith & Wesson was better, you couldn't make the argument to me that it was better to get 140 versus 3 9mm into somebody, or vice versa. I knew enough from hunting and ballistics on my own to know that the more rounds you get into something like that, especially pistol rounds, which are inherently ineffective, the more you get on target, the better chance you have of hitting something vital. So I switched even back then to the 9mm, long before everybody was doing it, long before the FBI went back to it, long before everybody realized it was probably the definitive go-to defensive cartridge. Just to let you know where I'm coming from before I start what I'm going to talk about. Is the 40 Smith & Wesson still relevant right now? And I would say yes, this is a very topical episode. I'd say right now there is a flood of, on the market, 40 Smith & Wesson. And right now, since there's a lot of new shooters getting into shooting, and I think a lot of them are getting handguns, and the vast majority are in 9mm, that puts a great demand on 9mm. I can't speak for anybody else, but right now, I can get 40 Smith & Wesson. I have, access to cases and cases of it. Police departments trading it in and things like that. I can get good Spear Lawman ammunition for $10 a box of 50. This is me. I can also get good Federal Hydroshock HSTs for, less than $20 a box, which is great because there's a lot of police trade-ins right now. I listed some cases on Gunbroker, and I had to keep lowering the price because nobody was buying it. And like I said, right now the price of 9mm is going up, and is way higher than it was a couple of years ago. And since so many people are trading in and getting away from Smith & Wesson, one of the keys in life to being successful is, by definition, you're not going to get ahead or be different by doing what everybody else does exactly the same way. So if everybody's driving up the cost of 9mm, and you can get 40 Smith & Wesson in a lot of different configurations in stock, a lot of places when 9 has one or two things in stock, and 40 has a bunch of different options in stock, is that relevant right now? Is 40 Smith & Wesson still relevant? I would say right now it might not be a bad choice, because you can get good deals sometimes on police trade-in Glocks or police trade-in Smith & Wesson M&Ps in 40 Smith & Wesson, which was designed from the ground up in 40 Smith & Wesson, or, maybe an HK USP. Those are great guns. And here's the great thing about 40 Smith & Wesson. Most of the common guns, you can get a conversion barrel. You might need an extractor, you might not, depending on the design of the gun, and a recoil spring, which you should stock plenty of extra anyway if you're a gunfighter, because believe it or not, you're supposed to change those generally every 1,000 rounds, or maybe a different count depending on the gun. But you're actually supposed to change your main spring, your recoil spring. You're supposed to do that. So you should have those anyway. But a different drop-in barrel, a different extractor, and now you can shoot 40 Smith & Wesson and 9mm. And if you're worried about not getting ammo to train right now, if you're worried about not shooting what you have for whatever reason, buy 40 Smith & Wesson and shoot it. It is available both in practice loads and defensive loads. And it's a good price if you get like the police trade-in ammo. That ammo, if it's stored in a good place, generally doesn't expire. So now might be a good time to take advantage of the market. There's a lot of crappy things going on right now with the market, with gas prices and other ammo prices. But there's some good values to be had, and maybe 40 Smith & Wesson is one of them. Maybe get it and train with it, especially if you're not brand new. I wouldn't advise 40 Smith & Wesson for a brand new handgun shooter. But if you're a decent gunfighter, if you're working on mastery of a handgun and you're good at it, maybe it'd be good to get out there and train a bunch with 40 Smith & Wesson, because you're not worried about getting the ammo. And then, transferring over and carrying at whatever caliber you want. But maybe training some drills in 40 and then dropping the 9 barrel in, or shooting the same platform in 9. Kind of like going, hiking with a rucksack. You have extra weight, you have extra work to do, and then when you drop it, it's way easier to hike. Maybe something similar with 40 Smith & Wesson. And another cool thing about the 40 Smith & Wesson, I might do another entire episode on the 357 SIG. Generally, most guns that are chambered in 40 Smith & Wesson, you can get a 357 SIG conversion barrel, at least most popular guns. And 357 SIG, I think, is an awesome caliber. To be fair, I've never owned one. I don't know why as soon as the 357 SIG came out, it wasn't better and more popular always than the 40 Smith & Wesson. I think it's a better caliber. But it never was as popular, which means you don't get the great values on ammo that you'll get on the 40 Smith & Wesson. But, again, you could train with the 40 and drop a 357 SIG barrel in it. And 357 SIG has a good reputation for being, as far as handguns go, good ballistically. I don't think that I would train. It's okay. Dog's alerting on something. Hold on, guys. Well, I am back. Cowboys/cowgirls on horses. That's great. Good boy, him. That was the first time that my dog, I think, has spotted something way off in the distance before I did. He is becoming a better hunter. So that's kind of the point of why I took advantage of this time to get out here. So that's great. On the downside, I might have forgot what I was talking about. The 357 SIG is good ballistically. And since I'm out here in the wilderness recording this, I don't really have a way to edit it or go back and listen. I just kind of record it and upload it, just like the old days, if you guys have listened that long. But a 357 SIG, so you could train in 40, spend a little bit more money on your defensive loads, which if it's a defensive load, I wouldn't worry too much about the cost per round on it. I would get what I thought was best in what shot to point of aim, point of impact, as we've discussed previously. But another good option. So if you could get a good value on a trade-in 40 Smith & Wesson, which I see those on sale, a SIG 226, 229 M40 with a 357 SIG barrel and a conversion 9mm barrel, which for those is all you need, and a recoil spring, which are like $8 or something, and you should stock extra of those anyway, and a different magazine. That gives you a lot of versatility. If you were to bug out gun, truck gun, whatever, that wouldn't be my first choice. Pistol would be my last choice, even though it's what I train with the most and won the most competitions with. It's the least effective, least versatile, least ability to stop a threat quickly. But if you were going to have a handgun to leave with and having, 2 extra barrels and an extra magazine or 2 and an extra spring or 2, that would give you a lot of versatility as far as ammo that you came across. And again, if you're worried about not being able to get ammo to replace whatever, I would say stock up on it now. It is available now. I don't see it going back to the prices that it was a couple of years ago anytime soon, and I could see it going away. But if you're going to be able to get anything right now, the most available that I've seen for centerfire defensive handgun calibers is 40 Smith & Wesson. So is 40 Smith & Wesson relevant again? I'd say it's probably the only time this is the most relevant it's ever been. I don't think it was needed at all since they made it. I think it was overhyped, and then people realized that it wasn't really any better than 9. But right now, it is more available, and the guns can be had sometimes cheaper, and the ammunition can be had in better configurations. If you're buying like dirt cheap 9 and dirt cheap 40, probably about the same. But if you're talking like good loads, like spear lawman, something you're going to train with that's going to shoot the same as your defensive loads, you might save some money on 40. And again, having that conversion barrel gives you a lot of utility. Another good value if you want to stack up on magazines. A lot of those agencies that are trading in those guns, they have big stockpiles of those 40 Smith & Wesson magazines. Sometimes they can be had really cheap. Then I just listed some on Gunburger, I think like 3 mags, and they sold for like $7, which disappointed me, but it shows you that there's a good value out there. You stock up on those things. And again, you're not worried about, training with them. Throw them in the dirt, get them dirty, you break one out, you're out a couple of bucks. I'd rather you have with a 40 that you train with and shoot with than a 9mm that you don't shoot because the ammo is so irreplaceable. Or you don't want to shoot it because what you have to pay to replace a 9mm, which I've heard. And my advice to you there as a gunfighter is it doesn't matter what ammo used to cost. It doesn't cost that anymore. If you want to continue to train, shooting is a perishable skill. Ammo costs what it costs. Just like food storage, try and shoot the older stuff up, store the new stuff. It is what it is. It doesn't matter that gas used to be $1 something a gallon. Right now, it's whatever it is a gallon. And if you have to go to work, you got to pay that cost. Same with training. Don't be afraid to train. Don't be afraid to shoot. And maybe 40 Smith & Wesson will get some people back into it, back into shooting. With that, men, out here enjoying this beautiful northern Arizona day. Tactical tip of the day will not be about 40 Smith & Wesson. It will not be about shotgun. It will be about shooting semi-automatic handguns in .22 long rifle, which can be a bit finicky. But if you get a good gun oil with a good applicator, Lucas Gun Oil, I don't get any kickback from these companies, but the one I can think of that makes an applicator with a little tiny nozzle, which means you can put on like literally a drop at a time, which is nice. Most .22 long rifle magazines have a little cutout in them, unlike most centerfire magazines. You can go along and put just a little bit of oil in each one of those cases, which will stop them from which will aid in them not getting stuck as much in the chamber of the gun when you fire. That's a real common problem with .22 because you tend to shoot a lot and train a lot, and if you're like me, you probably don't clean them every time you shoot them. But putting a little bit of oil on those cases will just kind of lube as you go, and if it's a kind of gun oil that breaks up fouling and stuff, like a CLP or something, it even helps clean it. So if you're out on a training session and that .22 pistol starts to gum up, just a little bit of oil on the cases of those in the magazine. Just, again, a drop maybe on every one, on every third one, whatever you want to do. Know your gun. But that's a good tip to keep that .22 rifle running when you're in training. And then when it starts to malfunction, obviously when your training is done, go back and give it a quick clean. But that's your tactical tip of the day off the top of the head. And your tactical verse of the day. God resists the proud, but gives grace to the humble. If you resist the devil, he will flee from you. Draw near to God, and he will draw near to you. Cleanse your hands, you sinners. With that, men, the engine on the Hummer is probably cool enough for me to put coolant in it, which I carry extra of, so I am hiking back to the Hummer, and have a blessed day.